certainly isn't the reunion that I was hoping for with you guys. But basically, I am Michael Bane. I was the host of Best Defense Survival for their entire run. And with me, we've already mentioned Mike Seeklander, are the people who made the show the landmark show that it was. Michael Janich, who was with us from the very beginning on both Best Defense and Survival. Rob Pincus in every episode of Survival, and I think the first 4 seasons of Best Defense. Of course, Mike Seeklander, who picked up there and was with us all the way through to the end of the run. And what we want to do here is exactly what we've did over the years with the Best Defense, is we want to talk about what your best defense is at this particular point in the coronavirus or the COVID-19 epidemic that is literally affecting every single one of us. Mr. Janich, you want to take it from here?
First of all, it's great to see you guys. I'm glad that everyone is healthy and doing what needs to be done to take care of yourselves and take care of your families. We've in our Best Defense episodes and the Best Defense Survival, one of the things that we always emphasized was getting your head in the game early in the process. And the difficult thing right now for a lot of people is that they haven't done that, and they're basically late to the game. So they're trying to figure out now how to make up for lost ground. And unfortunately, there's only so much you can do at this point. And I know that's kind of a harsh reality, and it's not good to hear that, but really what you have to do is, if you're starting from ground zero at this point, you're behind the curve, and acknowledging that is kind of an important reality check. It doesn't mean that you're doomed by any means, but what it means is you've missed a lot of opportunities that you could have otherwise had you started to prepare earlier, and if you'd had your head in the game a little bit better than if you're starting right now.
Mr. Pincus, can you talk a little bit about fear? Because I just came back from a run into town. I guess it's kind of like running Damnation Alley, right? But I came back from a run into town, into supermarkets, to a couple of things I needed to do to tie things up. And the fear was thick enough to cut with a knife.
Yeah, and you're in a rural area. As I think a lot of people know, you're in a pretty remote area. I have been in both rural areas and urban areas over the last week. I've been on a cross-country road trip. You see I got the car seat back here. I brought the toddler Pincus from the Western HQ out in Colorado by you to Florida, and spent some time in Nashville with my older daughter, and then got down here a couple of days ago. There are places where it really does just look like business as normal, and then increasingly this last week, it's gotten a lot less normal, both in grocery stores, in restaurants, just stopping at gas stations. And it reminds me of some other times in our history when people were concerned. And what I'm starting to see is I'm now starting to see the other side of that initial, like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I'm already starting to see the people checking in on one another. So I don't know if you guys are seeing it. I happen to have been out and about moving a lot in the last week, and people at gas stations I was pulling a U-Haul, pulling some stuff back, and people were, well, how far are you going? I guess you're all set up. Looks like you've got plenty of supplies. People checking in on one another just in general with out-of-state plates. I'm hearing the conversations turn from fear to more of a concern. And I think it comes back to what Mr. Janich just said, just in terms of acceptance, right? In terms of people realizing, okay, we're all in this and we are all in it together. And while we're supposed to stay separate and social distance, it's not the human way. It's not the American way. To stay disconnected. And we're starting to see people post things like, don't take that last roll of toilet paper, or that last box of, whatever ramen noodles when there's an elderly person in that behind you. Maybe turn around and ask them, is this what you were going for? And we're starting to see that. So I'm glad to see the fear being replaced with true concern. And I think that's sort of the difference between, like, we always talk about paranoia versus preparation. When you get prepared, you're not scared anymore, and people are starting to come around to dealing with this. So I think that's really important, because if you're responding out of emotion because you didn't have a plan, it's not going to be your best defense. One of the things, I've been thinking about a lot this week, I actually posted the description, the screenshot from that first season of Best Defense Survival when we dealt with pandemics in that, I think it was episode 4. Maybe one of the reasons that show only went a couple of years is because people just don't do well at planning for something that's so far out in advance. You can at least get your head around a home invasion. You get your head around an armed robbery, because we see those things every day. we don't see a pandemic every day, and we've never seen anything like this.
Mr. Seeklander, what are you seeing where you are? That would be up in Oklahoma. What are you seeing there?
Well, I tell you, I would compare it with what Rob mentioned. Certainly, I don't know if I want to use the word panic, but here's an interesting observation. About 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, I was in a motel room after a class, and I started getting text message pictures from my buddy Rich Brown, who does my podcast with me, and he's sending pictures of hand sanitizer, bleach, and all these different things, like tablefuls of this stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, bro, there's a pandemic. Are you missing it? And he was kind of joking. And this was quite a while ago, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I was flying home the next day. I said, Rich, send me a shopping list. I already have a bunch of this stuff because, as you all know, with the best defense survival, we kind of live that life. So sometimes I felt like in the past, man, I'm too deep into this. So I got home and went shopping and mentioned it to my wife and father-in-law and some folks in the area. And largely at that point in time, just 2 weeks ago, it was the whole, his infectious disease specialist says it's just the flu. I mean, that was the mentality. So Rich and I put a couple podcasts out. I would thank him because I credit him completely, although we were already on it talking about it with being way ahead of this. And, I was at the stores getting some additional things that I needed ahead of it. But now, Mike, in the last week, there was a day last week where, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it was the toilet paper bandit made some sort of Facebook post, but that was the day in America you couldn't get Facebook. And legitimately on Amazon, two days later, you couldn't find the stuff, which is funny to me because I think there's so many other things people are missing than toilet paper. But I get the mentality. But now, I wouldn't describe it as panic, but you can go to the Sam's this morning at whatever time, 10 minutes before open, there was still a line. The shelves are bare. So yeah, I would say that I wouldn't call it panic, but it's funny. All of those folks, when I was articulating, hey, this is going on, they're like, yeah, even close family members are now like, oh, wow, this is really going on. This is something we need to prepare for, which is interesting.
I've seen it with my own friends. As recently as a week and a half ago, one told me, said that no matter what, she would not live in fear. I said, we're not talking about living in fear here. I'm telling you that there's a wave coming. And the wave is going to come whether you're ready for the wave or not. The wave doesn't care about you at all.
That's right.
And, then, within a couple of days, she's like, what do I need? I said, well, it's more a question of what do you have?
Yeah.
You're a neighbor, and I really feel very strongly that as antisocial as I am, as you guys know, it's important for neighbors to pull together. As you said, Rob, it's important for neighbors to pull together. It's important for you to understand kind of your basic humanity that's holding you together in what amounts to a really scary situation. Certainly different than I've ever seen. And I do agree, Rob. When we're doing best defense survival, a lot of people would pretty much say, you guys are really interesting, but you're really wickedly off the wall.
Right.
And I think it may be that we haven't had an enemy for so long, we now no longer believe an enemy exists. And we just got a very rude awakening.
I was over in Europe, I don't know, 10 days ago now. It's been a little bit of a blur the last couple weeks, but I think I got back 10 days ago. And Mike Janich, I think you know Enzo down in Switzerland, Universal Shield. So he's hosted me for 15 years over there. And Enzo he lives this life. He's all about preparation, defense, empowering others. He practices and trains and works out and eats right. I mean, this guy, trust me, he's the most realist of the real guys. Yeah. And I got there a couple days before the class. We were doing 2 days, one day all armed professionals from all across Switzerland from one company, private armed security company. And the next day was a mix, law enforcement, military, some private citizens. And on the mixed day, we had some people that were supposed to come up from Northern Italy, including one of my certified instructors that worked with me for years. And Enzo was all about, we can't have these guys from Northern Italy come up. Like maybe if they wear masks, but we just can't do it. And this was just starting to percolate that Northern Italy was breaking out. And we had information from the private security guys that the only cases identified at that time, they weren't even public, in Geneva, had started with someone who was at Fashion Week in Milan like 10 days before that. And, we had Euroshot coming up within a week, and people were starting to talk about maybe it's going to get canceled. There was a big jewelry and watch show that got canceled within that 24 hours in Geneva. And so all this to say, Enzo was way ahead of the curve. He was saying, no, we can't have guys from Northern Italy. It's a breakout zone. And then sure enough, 10 days later, Euroshot, he was canceled. Northern Italy's on lockdown, 1,000, deaths or whatever approaching and around Europe at this point. But even the people that came out of Geneva on the second day, Enzo had wear masks to keep their whatever they had coming out of Geneva from where we were in a more rural area. And there were people who were further ahead of the curve. And even me, who is intellectually aware that these things can happen, I was still, not taking it nearly as seriously as other people that were influencing me, making me pay more attention to it. By the time I got done my business in Europe and left early because Euroshot was canceled, I was thinking, gee, I wonder if I'm going to have a hard time getting back into the U.S. And then 4 or 5 days later, that came. So even coming down here to Florida, I'm standing by. I'm supposed to fly baby Pincus back to her mom in Colorado tomorrow. It won't surprise me if we get an interstate travel ban or a non-essential flight ban between now and 11 o'clock in the morning.
Interesting you point out how your host over there was ahead of the curve. And then, of course, Rich Brown, my buddy, was. But one of the things that he was doing is he had created a spreadsheet like 2.5 weeks ago, and he was simply looking at the numbers. Not, I was listening to the news. I think we were all listening to the news. He was doing the numbers, and he's like, dude, I'm doing the numbers. And if this, the doubling rate and one of the not two, we all hear all these things, of course, daily now, is correct. This thing is global in a matter of weeks. It's simple math. He said, I'm not real smart. I'm not an infectious disease person, but it's math. And if you look at the math, it's simple. It paints the picture. Now we can change the course of it theoretically, but it paints a definitive picture. There's no running from it. There's no hiding from it. It is what it is. And I think, and there were some guys actually in that field of expertise that totally predicted this thing based on what it was doing. They just looked at how it responded and stuff like that. Very, very interesting.
One thing, just going back to Best Defense Survival, when we were all of us in Texas and we're working with essentially military war gamers who war gamed the worst case scenarios. One of the things, if you guys remember, I did is that afterwards, because this was off the record, I would say, what keeps you awake at night? Because these are guys who deal with the end of the world on a daily basis. And one of the epidemiologists told me, he said, have you ever heard of Wuhan, China? Said, now, well, in passing. And he goes, you ever heard of the open food market in Wuhan? I said, in passing. And he goes, that's what keeps me awake at night. I said, okay, you got to explain. And he goes, I have been to the virology lab, the essentially bioweapons lab at the Chinese government. And he goes, it scared the living heck out of me. He goes, I really feel very strongly that if we're going to be looking at a worldwide pandemic, it's going to come from there. It's going to come, who knows, out of the lab. But he said, if you think of the open food market as a giant petri dish, you pretty much have that covered. So it's, as soon as I said, as soon as I saw in the news there's a breakout in Wuhan, I'm like, wait, that name is very familiar, and it's interesting to know. And in some ways, I'm glad that, as far back as 10, 12 years ago, epidemiologists were watching for that. And I think they knew as soon as China told them that this was a serious breakout. I'm thankful that it's not, Captain Trips. There's scarier viruses out there, but not to denigrate this. I think that's kind of where the balance is it is real, and it's going to kill a bunch of people, as does every respiratory virus that sweeps through. Someone pays that price. But Janich, going back to Best Defense Survival, well, I think one of the things that I was amazed that you did was you came up with simple steps. I tend to default to complexity, but you default to simple steps. And if someone would come to you right now and say exactly as we said at the opening of the show, oh my God, what do I do now? What do they do now? Let's go, Janich, and then we'll jump over to Seeklander and Pincus. You come back in at the end there. What do they do now?
The people who actually saw the Best Defense Survival back in the day, or if you bought the DVDs or whatever it might be, what was interesting was the way the show evolved over time. was we kind of started off with the disaster of the week. So we would talk in kind of conceptual terms about what happens during a hurricane, what happens during an earthquake, or whatever it might be. And what it was a lot of advice and good information that was kind of supplemented with a lot of B-roll footage of different disasters, which is good from a kind of a global overview perspective. But what I really wanted to accomplish with the show, and what we got into really in kind of the third season before the show went away, was the idea of what can you do? What can you control based on the environment that you have, your home, your family, and everything else? And what tangible steps can you take to really prepare yourself? That was the stuff that I felt was most useful. That was the stuff that I felt also was the most empowering. And that really would be the stuff that right now is going to pay the biggest dividends. And what it came down to, there was actually one of the episodes, Seeklander was talking a little bit earlier about doing the math. Well, yeah, when you do the math as far as the threat that we face with regard to the pandemic and everything, it's definitely scary. Well, the other part of it, and one of the ways that you can fight back and prepare and keep yourself and your family safe, is to do the math as far as what resources you have. Like sitting down and saying, okay, if I've got a 20-pound bag of rice, how many meals do I get out of this? Being able to take a look at how many cans of food you have on the shelf, what resources you actually have, and then what resources are available in the grocery store. You may go to the grocery store and say, oh my God, all my favorite stuff isn't on the food shelf. Okay, great. What is there? What can you buy? How can you top off your supplies? And how can you replenish what you've got? And then figure out realistically, do I have a week's worth of food? Do I have 10 days? Do I have 2 months? Understanding that fact by doing the math, being able to quantify that stuff, that is hugely empowering. And that's one of the things that people need to start doing now, especially if you are behind the curve and if you started late.
Mike Seeklander?
He always has some of the best advice in terms of simplicity. And, one of the things that we did when we talked about this deal on one of our podcasts was an assessment of current weaknesses. And I think that's kind of what Mike's alluding to. Also looking at your real numbers, because, as you sit there, wherever you are, as maybe that you're watching this video, if you don't really know, well, I think I have enough food for 4 family members. I think I have enough water. I think we have toilet paper. You don't really know. So I totally agree with the numbers. And then, I would go back to all of the standard, hard, fast, simple stuff that we did on all of the episodes that I was involved with. And I know that we're done the same way when Rob Pincus was involved. It's just, simple self-defense plans. I mean, dealing with the crowd, dealing with an angry shopper, dealing with a situation where you have to defend yourself, defending your home. Those basic self-defense principles haven't changed. I mean, we as a group on a show for years taught those lessons over and over again. If you haven't watched The Best Defense, you should. I mean, back in the day, we would look at a scenario or a crime. We would show you, sometimes best, better, and worst case. We did different variations, and then a solution, a training solution, and a strategic solution, an information solution to self-defense. And I would say that, folks, we've taught you what you need to know as long as you paid attention. But I really like that idea of, really assess yourself. Where are your weaknesses? And if you're someone who maybe doesn't know if this virus is going to affect your family, approach it from the perspective of who's it going to affect directly in your family, who's it going to affect that you might be in contact with, and then how do you mitigate those effects as good as you possibly can. And it's weird. It seems to be there are two schools of thought out there. One where shelter in place, minimize contact, and the other school of thought, and I'm not sure if it's an intelligent argument that says, hey, this thing is going to have to flourish anyways. I mean, we're all going to have to build up an immunity to it. I don't know if that's necessarily true, because I think the current experts are saying if we can flatten out the response and minimize the damage to the health system, that's going to have a lot of effect. And also, I know that Michael Bane, in your email, you mentioned a key word, and I don't know how you worded it. You might want to read part of it, but it's stop panicking. We're done panicking. Right? There's nobody that just kicked open your front door. The virus is not going to kick open your front door, right? It's probably going to be in your community. You can't argue that. It's going to be there. So stop the panicking and let's start thinking about things logically, a step at a time.
Mr. Pincus?
Yeah, I mean, obviously super solid, great advice from Mike and Mike. I think it is important that, if you know, we can keep saying, oh yeah, well we covered this 10 years ago. Well, I had to go back and I literally, that was my post a few days ago. It's like, I'm going to go back and see what we said, because I don't remember the exact details on pandemics, but generally these principles and concepts that underlie however you're responding to any given event are sort of the same at the 100,000-foot view, right? And sure, it's important to have the stockpile. So I've got, you know, we were talking before we went to the recording here, the idea that, well, we have the chance now, or we had the chance for the last week, to go to the store and buy supplies for this event so that we're not digging into our stockpile, right? If you feel like you can still move about and not expose yourself or bring something back to a high-risk person in your family and come back with new fresh supplies, you've got the funds now. The stores have them on the shelves in the mornings, at least, if not in the afternoons. Why go into your, you know, doomsday sort of bag if you don't have to? Like, let's go ahead and get what we can get now, because there may come a day, whether it's, you know, the government says, hey, we really prefer that no one leave your house, like they have in Northern California or on the Bay Area, and said, just give us 10 days to knock this back, stay in your home unless you absolutely have to come out. Now's the time to go into your stockpile. So what you can do now is incrementally add, and when I say incrementally, I mean don't go out and buy every bag of rice in the store, right? Incrementally add to whatever you have, incrementally add to what you have in terms of cleaning supplies. You know, you don't need 1,000 masks. If you feel like the time comes when you have a family member, you're locked down in your home, one family member starts coughing, maybe it's a good idea to put them in the back room, put a mask on them. You don't need 4 masks for 4 people. You need 1 mask for the person that may have been exposed. Same thing if you're going to go out into the public, right? Things like that. I think it is important to understand that information that we've all been putting out for decades now, you know, you can go through, whether it's American Warrior Society, you can go to Downrange TV, Outdoor Channel stuff, you can go to Marshall Blade Concepts, you can go to Personal Defense Network, and all of this information's out there. If you're going to be quarantined, you're going to sit around your house. If you can't go to work, great. Remind yourself. Go. Most of it's out there for free. All of us have paywalls and all that, but we've also put out a ton of free information, as have hundreds of other experts that we can recommend or that you know out there in the community. There's plenty of information out there to be had. One of the things that I think I'm concerned a little bit about in our community, especially if you go back 3 weeks ago, forget about coronavirus, the atmosphere in the Second Amendment community, you know, for the last 6-7 months has really been this percolating because of the 2020 election. You know, we will not comply. You can't oppress us. You're all tyrants. My fear is that there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder overcorrection happening in some circles where people are saying, I'm not going to quarantine. Government can't tell me what to do. And it's sort of like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Like, this may not be the tyranny you think it is, right? This might actually make sense to sequester yourself. And I've had some people say, well, what's the difference if I stay in my house for 14 days? The virus is still out there. Well, the idea here is the incubation period, right? So just a real quick, I'm not a virologist by any stretch, but just a real quick 100,000-foot view. The idea is the incubation period. You don't know if you've been exposed right now. I don't know if I've been exposed right now. All the traveling I've been doing, everything else. If I stay away from people for 14 days and I haven't developed a fever, I haven't developed a cough, I haven't developed the headaches, I'm not symptomatic, then there's, like, at this point, it seems like a 99.9% chance that I don't have it. That things I've touched during that time don't still have it. Like, I didn't bring it back, it's done. If the whole world were to take a pause for 14 days, which obviously isn't realistic, but as much as we can, take a pause for 14 days, the people who become symptomatic raise their hand and say, I need to go to the hospital. Going back to what you guys mentioned, we don't want everybody going to the hospital. People that are symptomatic go in, get into a true quarantine situation, as well as being treated for the virus. And now the rest of us can come out and say, okay, well, the people that had it, they're being treated. We're in a much safer position now without this pandemic spread. That's the theory. Will it work out that way? I don't know, but I intellectually understand the theory, and I don't think it's a government test of tyranny telling us we need to, like, not congregate this week.
No, I think it is a test of a theory. And yeah, I have been critical of some of the government response. But that said, you know, after today's run, I'm done. I'm here for 14 days. I can't, you know, obviously there's no travel. Everything's canceled all the way out. I think it's a valid test. You know, if you can get people to stay home, and if you can figure out a way to recompense my friends who own a restaurant, was right on the edge. They're done. You know, and it breaks my heart that they, if I can go pick up carry out on the curb and keep them alive, I'll do that in a heartbeat. I'll take that risk. But I think it's a valid idea to see if it works. Again, we worry, every one of us here worries about if the next time a progressive is in the White House and in control, then they say, well, let's have a national emergency on climate change. And hell, Trump did it. So we're going to do all this. But, to me, it comes back to the very first words, I think, that Mike said here is it's a mindset issue. I feel like, it's probably true with you guys. I've thought about this so long, it wasn't like I was gobsmacked. It was like, oh, well, yeah, here. I remember self-isolating during the swine flu because I really profoundly didn't want to catch it. And same thing, at that point, I was traveling 150, 160 nights a year. I didn't want to travel, and I cut out a lot of travel because I didn't want to walk through national airports, international airports. But you have to get your head totally around it. You have to just go, this is how it is. It might not be how I want it to be. And it might not be the best world that we can have, but it's what we've got. And once you accept the nature of, well, this is what I've got. Now, what can I work with? It's, I saw people going to the store, and one woman walked past me and she goes, boy, I really hate beets. Well, you can hate beets all you want, but if you don't have any supplies at home, beets are what you got. The stores, and from talking to my friends here, they're essentially no potatoes, no onions, no frozen food, no meat, no even fake meat, soy crumbles, no milk, no eggs. Most dairy products of any kind are gone. So if you're behind the curve, I agree. Take an inventory. What do you have? Because most people don't know what they have in their house because there's stuff in the back shelf. How many cans of tuna are in the very back of your shelf that you haven't seen in like 5 years? Tuna's a great thing. But you have to take an inventory. You have to sit down and say, what do I have in terms of disinfectant supplies? What do I have? Do I have any masks? I think we were always a strong proponent of having some level of higher end medical response. Where we have gloves, we have, N95 masks. I don't have tons of, if I had tons of them, I would donate them to the doctors I know and let them have them because they need them more than I do. Do I have a 20 pack of N95 masks? Yeah. From 12 years ago, something like that. But you need to know what you have, and you need to know what your resources are, and you need to know what you're good at. I'm really good at doing such and such and such and such. You need to know who your neighbors are. In fact, I just loaned somebody 5,000 small pistol primers. It's not so much a loan. I'm pretty sure I'll never see another small pistol primer from them. But they're like, oh, my God, I don't have anything. And I said, well, you reload. And they're like, I don't have any primers, which is alien to me. I said, okay, fine. I can help you there. I can do that for you there. A lot of it is paradigms, it's kind of, which has always been one of my hobby horses. I worked with Joel Arthur Barker, who wrote the definitive book on paradigms and paradigm analysis. And, once you kind of see beyond that paradigm, you say, okay, I need to set aside the way the old world looked. I need to set that aside for at least 14 days. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. And there's no point, and I kind of seen this, and you guys can chime in, as where I've had people call me and say, we're not going to let go of that old paradigm. By God, we're going to hold on to it. And the sooner that you let it go, the sooner that you accept you're in the soup, the faster you can respond. And that's almost exactly the same thing we taught for self-defense. It's exactly the same thing we taught walking down the street and being in a mugging situation or a home invasion. The sooner you realize you're in the soup, the sooner you can respond. Mr. Seeklander?
Well, yeah, I think Janich probably used to say it the best. He said, stop thinking about why someone's punching you in the face. Instead, respond to the punch in the face. But let me shed some positive light. First of all, as far as the 2-week quarantine or stay at home, I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think there's a significant downside to it. And we've got to trust the experts to an extent. I think there is an upside to it. Definitely is an upside. But I would also recommend the folks focus on what you can do versus what you can't do. And I wrote an article years ago when I had my hips fixed. I had both hips replaced, as you guys all know. And I'm like, man, I can't go run. I can't go shoot. I can't do this. I can't build a stance. I can't blah, blah, blah. I can't lift. So finally I stopped that thinking and started focusing on what I can do. So let's say we do quarantine for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks and our life does change. Accept that, number one. But number two, what can you do? Well, good Lord, you can get on Personal Defense Network and read and educate and research yourself. You know, you could take on pretty much any Michael Janich NBC or Counterblade system and probably learn it with a buddy or a neighbor or a family member over the next 2 weeks. You should come out of your house significantly more skilled with your firearm. If you're not getting the gun on and dry fire on a daily basis, well, you're just sitting around poo-pooing on yourself and, you know, whining because you're like, well, the coronavirus, who cares? Come out of this thing as strong as you possibly can. Focus on what you can do versus what you can't do.
Janich?
As you said, on Best Defense, one of the core concepts that we always emphasized was you have to get past denial. So whenever you're in any kind of situation, the first thing you have to do is say, okay, this is real. This is actually happening. I need to accept that, need to get over it, and then focus on what you can do to be able to deal with it. That is always the first thing. And if you don't do that, then literally everything else is kind of academic. At that point, you're in a fantasy versus the reality that you have to deal with. Like you said, you know, figuring out what you have on your shelves, looking at what you have. You should have, you know, ideally, it'd be a first in, first out type of thing as far as your food. Look at what you normally eat and all that type of thing. But yeah, if there's stuff that is in the back of the shelf that you haven't seen, pull all that stuff out, figure out what you've got, quantify it, figure out how much you normally use. If you don't know how to cook, again, like Seek was saying, this is a great time to develop new skills, to explore new things. And in the process, you also are able to wrap your head around things where you say, okay, 1 can of tuna, is that a meal? Is that half a meal? Is that 2 meals? What is it? And being able to quantify that stuff and having that knowledge, that's what's going to empower you to not only be able to deal with the situation more effectively, but also it's going to put your mind at ease. You know, when you're in a situation like this, a lot of what people are grappling with is that uncertainty. What's going to happen? What's going on? Am I ready? Am I not? Well, the more that you can look at this stuff tangibly and say, okay, great. I had these resources and I was able to make 2 meals out of this to feed my family. And I know that if I do the math, that I've got, you know, another 45 days of food without replenishing. That is actually really reassuring. And if you take that time and do that now, you're just going to be way ahead of the curve because you're actually addressing the problem. And more importantly, you're addressing the emotional and psychological aspects that are the root of the problem.
Rob?
Yeah, you can't execute a plan that doesn't exist. Back in the day when we were doing Best Defense Survival, I took a lot of the core components and did a DVD on disaster prep and loose, like very, very superficially identified different types of disasters, or really talked about the whole concept. And one of the most important concepts that I learned during that process of developing that content and before it, and one of the things that inspired it was this idea of trigger points. And I've talked about it a lot in other types of personal defense. If you don't have a plan, you can't respond. You're just making things up. You're improvising, right? But even if you have a plan, if you don't have a trigger point to implement that plan, then it may never come to fruition. You may end up improvising anyway, or just be further behind the curve. So in this, even now, if this is now the soberest moment you've got, you didn't plan this 6 months ago. 6 days ago, you're running around saying, I can't believe this is even real. Well, now you've come to acceptance and you're back in a calm moment. It's one thing to do the math, but now you've got to implement your rationing plan as well. So if you say, well, the can of tuna is 2 meals for me, make it 2 meals. Don't the first 3 days eat the whole can. When you put your plan into place, put your plan into place. And if you end up with 3 extra cans at the end of the coronavirus quarantine, great, but you don't want to be 3 cans short. So you got to come up with your plan, and then you've got to find your trigger points to implementing that plan. And one of the things that I think is going to be hard for people is this, whatever version of social distancing or true quarantining you take on, really doing it. I had a meeting today. Somebody came by the range office down here in Florida, And, it's my habit, obviously, to reach out and shake hands with somebody that I know, or, give the half bro hug or whatever. And it was actually his body language as I reached out to shake his hand, where he kind of took not offensively, he just kind of took a half step back and gave me his elbow and had me, change that physical behavior that we were doing. Now, that wasn't 6 foot of distance, but now let's go to the UPS driver. Let's go to 10 days from now, some stranger walks up to the house, looking for food, looking for directions. Maybe it's a UPS, Amazon temporary driver in a vehicle I don't recognize. I don't know who it is. Am I going to open the door and let them cough on me or breathe on a family member? If I've put quarantine, if I've put social distancing in place, then I need to talk to them through that Ring camera. If you don't have the Ring camera, you need to talk to them through the closed door. Maybe you're going to put on a mask when you answer the door. Whatever your procedures are, start thinking about what they are now so that you don't have the sheriff's office, the utilities guy, the delivery guy, or the stranger walking up your front door, up your front porch steps, and then you're trying to figure out what to do, because you're going to end up doing nothing worthwhile, or you're going to overreact, or you're going to go into panic mode. So make that plan, put your trigger points in place, think ahead of time. Here's when I'm going to execute this plan, and you got an infinitely better chance of at least following through. May not be the best thing, but at least you've got something that isn't being made up on the fly.
One of the things that I've said repeatedly on my own podcast is that this is what DEFCON 1 looks like. We've finally reached Defense Condition 1. This is the real deal. And that means that you need to up your game to a fairly high level. I think it's a very, very valid point on maybe you should discuss with your family when to open the door. That's, it's a reasonable thing. It's a thing we've also talked about in Best Defense as a basic self-defense tool is because somebody knocks on your door, you don't necessarily open it. When you are in DEFCON 1, there is no reason to open the door to a stranger unconditionally. Absolutely not, because you don't know. Uncertainty leads to fear. Fear leads to panic. Panic leads to really stupid actions by people who would not normally do stupid things. If you have a plan within your family, it's okay, now this is really silly, kids, but you just can't run over and open the door. It's not going to change everything. And maybe we'll be back to, the future where you can open the door all the time. But for now, you're not going to. For now, you need to pay attention. If you go out, from my standpoint, God's sake, avoid crowds of people, not just for fear of infection, but for fear of panic is a viral infection, and it spreads faster than anything I've ever seen. It's a panic. Panic is like lightning arcing through a crowd. And if you've never seen it, you imagine that, it's going to go a certain step. It doesn't. It goes from my experience with it, having been in major urban riots, is it goes from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in a second. It goes from people having discussions to people throwing bricks in a second. At some point, should this continue, you need to, I think, I tend to want to see contingencies for worst case, best case, most likely case. Same thing we do with Best Defense. Worst case, there's no more beats. There's no more nothing. You're left with one cauliflower and 2 red onions. People are right now. People are pulling together. At that point in the future, and I hope we don't get there. I don't think we're going to get there. But if we get to that point, they're not going to pull together. The family units are going to collapse back in on themselves, and that's something we should be watching for. Where to me, it's where are we in the timeline of the disease? It's exactly like we talk about where are we in the timeline of a mugging or an attack or some kind of event there. Because if we don't understand where we are, then we don't understand what our reactions are. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's it's the 3 fights is a factor here too, right? You've got your preparation fight, right? You versus you. Did you do the things you need to do ahead of time? Are you at least doing the things now that you can do? Then it's the fight with the enemy, right? Do you survive coronavirus? Okay, so 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years from now, you survived coronavirus, but the aftermath, the paradigm shifts, the behavioral change, societal changes. You talked about your friends who might lose their business. I know personally large number of people already who've been laid off. Most of them got laid off without any notice other than the conceptual notice for the last week or so that this might come to that. But casino employees all over Las Vegas and Reno and Atlantic City. I have some family members affected there. People who work in gyms, cut down. The gym that I own in Ohio, we're shut down for in-person. Lots of good friends in the CrossFit community shut down for any in-person training, immediately moving to virtual training, distance education. Obviously all of us understand the power and the value of that. Somebody jumped into an instructor thread in one of the forums, I don't know, 10 days ago, 8 days ago, and said, what are you guys going to do to offset income, to affect, offset the income of the effect of people not showing up to classes? And I kind of jokingly said, well, in 2005, I'm going to start doing a training DVD series. And then in 2010, I'm probably going to switch over to streaming and have a paywall by 2012, and kind of talked about the fact that there are a lot of us who've been doing distance education. And there's no reason that anybody who's an educator that can't go to classes, whether you're a public school educator or any other kind, can't switch over to use technology like we're using right now to convey information without needing personal contact and without needing a group. But if you're not prepared for the aftermath of this, especially the financial aftermath, that may be incredibly more impactful for millions of people than the actual virus ever will be, right? If this works, the virus doesn't take you out, but you still got to be prepared for the financial aftermath of this and what it's going to do to a lot of communities, and potentially leading to more of that panic you're talking about. If you're not panicked now, in 10 days, where are you when there are plenty of beats on the shelves, but you don't have any money left to buy the beats, and neither is anybody else in your community? That's going to be a whole nother thing that's going to kick in here.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think that the after effects, that may go beyond just money and everything else as well. I don't even know what to predict. I mean, I don't think anybody knows what to predict in terms of the after effects. So I think that's a key. But the after effects in that case, you have a normal guy that lives 2 blocks down the road that would never consider breaking into your home or your vehicle, that now has no job and no money, and he knows the beats are on the shelf and he wants to certainly buy those beats. This absolutely may change a game in ways I don't think we can possibly predict.
I think we sort of come back around to the basic principles of the best defense is, you may not like the fact that you need to be armed right now, but it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. You do need to be armed right now. Not so much for this moment, but for the moment that comes down the road. I think all of us have been very much of the mindset of everybody needs a concealed carry permit, everybody needs training, and everybody needs to carry the gun every single day. Because otherwise, unless somebody calls you and says, we're going to mug you on Thursday, you're kind of really behind the curve. And we're sort of in that situation here. I don't think we're nearly close to that. And again, we may not get there. Interestingly enough, the MIT Technology Review in their white paper said that things will never get back to normal. That what we are in the middle of right now is a paradigm shift. There's that word again. Overall of how our culture is going to operate, because it's going to have to operate differently, and we'll be forced to operate differently in terms of once we have a disease that's a little bit more dangerous than influenza that's endemic in the population. Well, we're going to have to at some point be realistically ready to respond if that disease burns hot, if Minneapolis goes up. But what else do people need to be thinking about, Mr. Janich? What else needs to be at the front of their mind right now?
Well, again, as far as having the resources that you need, you talked about, the idea of, family relationships. Rob was talking about the idea of people checking on each other and everything. Part of assessing what you have is also assessing what you might have a lot of that you could potentially trade for something else. So if you do have a network of friends, if you have other family members in your area and you realize, okay, maybe we were caught a little bit unaware by this or a little bit late in the game, but for whatever reason, I've got a bunch of beats and you've got a bunch of toilet paper, and we need to kind of balance the load here and figure out how we can all have the proper amount of resources. That type of thing is also very powerful, that barter economy type of thing. And just being able to work with people you trust and be able to take care of each other. Again, You've got a lot of, free time on your hands now if you're sitting around rather than just listening to the news and being stuck in this doom and gloom cycle. Do something with it. So assessing your resources, assessing what you have, figuring out what you got and what you might be able to trade with somebody else. Even if it's not on the shelf, it doesn't matter that it doesn't mean that somebody else might not have that and that you have something that they might need. So thinking about that aspect of things is also very important. And again, it's a tangible way of addressing the problem and being able to put yourself at ease with having the resources you need.
Information actually is the antidote to panic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fair statement, that the more you know,
understanding what you've got, understanding what resources you have, understanding what relationships you have that you can count on. It's like any other difficult situation. You kind of figure out who your friends really are. And it's, if you've cultivated the right friends, I know that, if I had you guys as my neighbors, we'd be in great shape because, we know we're all prepared. Well, many people are in that situation where they know their neighbors. They know what their neighbors' capabilities are. They know, hey, there's a doctor that lives down the street or something of that nature, where if you need something, if you've already got a strong local series of relationships, being able to tap into those things, and also from an emotional and psychological standpoint, checking in on people. One of the things we've got going on in this situation that is unlike a hurricane or unlike many other disasters is that we have the full use of electricity and communication and everything else. So being able to talk to people, being able to communicate, even if you're inside your house, just like us being able to share this information here, that ability to communicate and to still continue to problem solve and be in touch with other people, even if you're not in touch with them, on a personal basis, that's still a tremendous asset. And we need to take advantage of that.
I think people also need to step back a little from the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
And from the heat that social media burns at. I mean, all of us are obligated to be on social media because we are, by definition, public people selling things. Yeah. But it's easy to go down that rabbit hole, especially with the media. With the media fueling the fire, it's easy to step into that rabbit hole, and it leads to depression, and depression leads to fear, and fear, it's. You need to, I think anyway, you need to kind of step back from what you're hearing and say, okay, no matter what happens, I'm good here. I've made my decisions. I know what I have in my home. I know what my skills are. I know what my neighbors have. I know what my neighbors might need from me. And, given, I hate to say it because I'm not a Christian, but an act of Christian charity is when you're able to share without damaging your family, then it's a good thing to do exactly that. But I think it's the rabbit hole may be one of the most dangerous things to our own mindset than anything else.
Which again, when you communicate with other people that you already trust, people you consider your peers, people that you have active relationships with, that gives you a good reality base rather than watching the news and getting the spin that you get from the media and getting a bunch of meaningless crap that is trying to create ratings for them. You talk to the person down the street or, the person across town that you already know and trust. And you say, how are you doing? Okay, I'm doing all right. We have this, we have that, family's doing okay. That type of relationship, that type of sounding board is incredibly useful and way more useful than the media rabbit hole.
Maybe the 95-5 rule, unless you're Rob Pincus, 5% is on the social media news and the other 95% is on the good stuff. Now, Rob Pincus is constantly everywhere. Somehow he manages it better than all of us combined. But literally, if you could focus on, what you guys are talking about, 95% on the good folks next door, the good family members, high quality training, get and read great articles that Rob wrote or I wrote, or videos, increase your skills, clean your garage, do all things. We're going to come out of this, folks, but probably about 5% is what you can watch on the news and social media right now without literally going berserk. I mean, as you all know, I shut off notifications of social media on my phone a long time ago. I don't check emails either, but really, folks, seriously, start focusing your mind on some of the things you can do versus you can do, and positive versus negative. We're going to come through it. And I would, also reflect or add to the MIT study that you referred to, Mr. Bane, is that, what is normal? What is the post 9/11 normal? Did we ever get back to normal after 9/11?
No, we did not.
I don't know if we did or not. So sorry, Rob, I had to call you out on social media, man.
I don't know. I feel like I must be duplicating my efforts better because I've actually cut back, but I still seem to be showing up everywhere, including on PBS on March 24th at 7 p.m. But the thing that occurs to me, you guys are being incredibly like kind of, all right, here's the good, here's the positive, here's the things to focus on. I have to throw out there, just because it's been on the back of my mind, and we're going to finish up here soon. Let's not forget that we're down here in Florida, and it was really, Mike Janich mentioned this thing about having electricity and having communication, all this stuff. And I was just talking with some people online yesterday about the fact that we can't count on continuing to have that through this. So, down here in Florida, we deal with hurricane season. And with hurricane season, you think about having that can of gas for your generator. Almost everybody's got some kind of generator, whether it's the built-in dedicated ones or a portable one. We're thinking about that. Well, it's time to think about that. It's time to start thinking, well, what if, even though it's not hurricane season, what if in 10 days, for whatever reason, the infrastructure goes down? In the Southeast right now and in the Midwest, we are in tornado season. Ask Nashville what happened, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. We are in, so, think about now, compound this. Are you going to have a shelter for, 200 homes get wiped out outside of Tulsa? Mike, now is everybody all of a sudden forget about quarantine? We're all going to go to a shelter and hang out together. How does that start to affect things? Not only from a first responder and infrastructure point of view, but from your own personal preparation. So just like you would if you were in a flood zone, okay, we can start making that preparation and we know what's happening, but what's going to happen if I have to move for whatever reason? And it could be a spring flood. It could be the tornado. It could be that the infrastructure starts to break down a little bit and fuel isn't delivered or whatever isn't delivered. And all of a sudden the electricity goes down. We can't get people to repair it. We do have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that if nothing else, the financial ripples we're seeing, if those financial ripples start to create breaks in the infrastructure, what are you going to do when you have your quarantine plan, but you don't have access to the internet? You lose your communication, electricity goes down. Do you have the firewood? Do you have the charcoal briquettes? Do you have the plan that doesn't rely on all the frozen food you bought this past weekend? I do think that's important to keep in mind also, is these things could get layered.
I think it's a very good point. We assume everything is going to go along okay, but again, that's normalcy bias. Rob, you live in Colorado. Janet, you're in Colorado. I'm in the high country as well. Every winter we have something called, what was that called? A blizzard. And it often knocks the power out for X amount of days. I mean, it took me a little while living in Colorado to understand that I had to address auxiliary heat because I might need auxiliary heat. I had to address cooking without the electric stove, cooking without, how do I prepare a meal if, I'm caught in a blizzard and the power's out. And since thinking about that stuff, I've seen it happen. And as somebody said to me, they said, it's not fair for you to talk about this stuff. You live in a secret hidden bunker. You're off grid. So, yeah, it's a decision I made. And specifically to insulate myself as much as possible from cascading failure. I mean, cascading failure scares me more than anything else in the world. An anecdote just to touch. I'm old enough to have been in New York City in the great 70s power blackout. And when the lights went out the first time, I ran up to the roof of my building to see where the lights were out. And it was almost like a science fiction movie. Is as far as you could see, there were lights and they blinked off all the way down, all the way around. And all of a sudden it's pitch dark. And you go, oh, wow, this is bad. It's also worth noting that there was 5 minutes of dead silence followed by the sound of sirens and breaking glass, which has always reminded me that not everyone is good people and not everyone is going to respond the way that I would hope they respond. But yeah, I think, think about the bad stuff, but think about it in terms of planning, and that's kind of the key, isn't it? Isn't it, Janet? I mean, it's not that you turn off the bad stuff, but it's say, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? If the grid goes down, do I have any communications? Do I have communications with my family? If the grid goes down, Or if the power goes out, can I cook? Can I heat? Tomorrow we're supposed to have a blizzard. We've got blizzard. It's 65 degrees and perfect. We have blizzard warnings for tomorrow. That just stresses the system. It just stresses the system more.
Well, again, the good thing is that we're all really busy, right? So when something like this happens, all of a sudden we have free time. Again, you can sit around, you can watch TV, you can do whatever it might be. As Seek said, you can set goals, training goals and things like that. Well, if there is, Rob's comments were very valid. The idea that, okay, right now we do have the luxury of electricity, we do have the luxury of internet and everything else, and hopefully that will continue. But if it doesn't, now you have the time to say, okay, what's my backup plan? Let me start layering it. So just as you're going through and looking at what you have in the pantry, what you have on the shelf, what's in the freezer, what that freaky thing is, it has all the freezer burn on it. Can you actually still eat it and all that kind of thing? As you're going through that, it's like, okay, can I get another thing of propane for the backyard grill? So if for some reason, the power does go out, if I can't use the electric stove, what do I have as a backup? Let me pull out that camping stove and see if I still have gas for that. You start looking at those things as well, and you do it in a way where, again, it's a logical process. It's a process of preparing and quantifying your resources, and then saying, okay, how can I have the next level of preparedness? That's a good thing. You don't want to do it in the sense of, okay, I'm going to spin myself in tight little circles and stay up at night worrying that, okay, well, what if the aliens land on my roof and the power goes out and this happens and this happens? You can't go down that road either. You've got to hit that happy medium. But again, with understanding what resources you have, with the idea of thinking through the process, with the idea of having a sound plan, comes the comfort of knowing that you are more prepared than maybe you realize right now.
So we're kind of at an hour, so probably we should look at starting to wrap up. But maybe we should go through and say, what are the bullet points? Something we, all over all those years, we kept coming back to, what's the bullet points? What's the takeaway on it? Seeklander, if there are 3 bullet points you could pull out here, what would they be?
I would go back to number 1, you're going to be okay. Number 2, take care of yourself and your family and your home. Go through the logical steps we talked about. And then number 3, use your time and resources as wisely as you possibly can. And I'm not just talking about the end of the world mentality. I'm talking about, let's say we have to do this for 6 weeks. Once again, I'm going to give you a challenge because I'm trying to be positive here. When you come out of that 6 weeks, you better be able to outdraw me and outcut Janich and outdo whatever Pincus is great. Whatever it is, you better be the best at it, right? Pincus does all kinds of stuff. Probably, I won't mention that, but yeah.
Out-text Pincus, yeah.
Good luck.
You can't out-text Pincus, all right?
No way.
Pincus, give me those 3 bullet points. What do they mean? What do you got?
I think that sooner rather than later, stop listening to us, stop watching the news, and sit down with your family or if you're your dog or whatever and make a plan. So come up with what your plan is going to be. What is your response going to be given the education and the information you have? Put that plan into effect and then follow that plan until things change significantly and force you to do something else. I think that's the best you can do to get on path with getting through this is set up what that's going to be for you in your best case scenario and then be ready to adapt as you have to.
Janich?
Number 1, as always, is to accept the fact that this is real. Make sure that you and your family understand it. Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't delude your kids. Don't, let everybody know this is real and it's something we have to deal with. Then set about a plan, quantify what resources you have, figure out what you've got, figure out what resources, not only as far as physical resources, but as far as people, relationships, things like that you can rely on and be able to pool those resources with those other folks. And then in the long term, make the commitment. If you were caught unaware with this, don't let it ever happen again. You talk about paradigm shifts. The biggest and potentially the most valuable paradigm shift you might have is to say, you know what? I never took this shit seriously before. I'm never going to let it happen again. So moving forward, I am going to prepare. I am going to have more resources. I am going to have a first in, first out for all my food. I'm going to make sure that I have a better plan next time around, and I'm never going to be caught by surprise ever again.
Those are very good. From my own standpoint, I always come back to see the world. Number one, see the world as it is. Don't see it through Pollyanna glasses, but don't see it through, and I'm very bad about this, don't see it through worst case scenario glasses either. Instead, see how it is and respond accordingly. And secondly, I think you have to practice being of good cheer, because the people around you are going to reflect yourself. I mean, monkeys mimic. It's classic. Primates always mimic. If you are the optimist and you are, don't worry, we can get through this, and you are that person, then it's going to make you more valuable to the tribe, if you will. It's going to make you more valuable to the people around you. And if you say, I've got skill sets, what can I do to help the people around me? Then you're going to raise their level as well. And finally, I mean, as you know, I've probably seen Lord of the Rings a million times, and I've certainly read the books 4 or 5 times. And I think I do that because it's distilled Western mythology. It's like the history of Western mythology boiled down to one point. And in the attack on the White City of Gondor, there's a moment when the gates are about ready to give, and the wizard Gandalf rallies the troops. And what he says is that we are soldiers of Gondor. We are soldiers of Gondor, and whatever comes through that gate, we will face it together. And I think that's where we need to be right now. Whatever comes through that gate, we will face it together, and we will come out on the other side stronger. Anything anybody needs to add here? I would like to say maybe if we could look at a week or 10 days getting together again, see what kind of response we get here. But as long as we have the internet, it might be wise to get together and talk.
The only thing else I would say, if you guys want to close it like we would normally close a show, say, hey folks, Mike Seeklander, you can find me at MikeSeeklander.com. Rob could say something, anything you have coming up, do it for 30 seconds. I'm still recording, and then I know we could discuss this after I stop the recording, but then you could have maybe Marshall or someone could help us out with the master edit of this thing, and we can all release it all channels.
Yep.
So do you want to close it out, Michael, or are we done?
Yeah,
closing?
I can. You know, I'm used to closing out shows, 700 half-hour episodes. To sum it up, let's just sum it up really simply. It's not the end of the world. It's a scary time, but we've seen scary times before. And what we taught all those years on the Best Defense and on the Best Defense Survival was have a plan. Make lists. Execute your plan. Talk to your family. Talk to your kids. Talk to your spouse. And more than anything else, remember that you are stronger than you think you are. So I'm Michael Bane. This is the Best Defense Survival. And hey, we may even see you next week.